All right, guys, second attempt. Hopefully this will be a little bit better. Sorry about that. Lost the connection, so we had to reset. So I'm going to go ahead and start over. I wanted to let you guys know that recently I had the exciting opportunity to be asked to be a speaker at the MTCCA, Missouri Track and Cross Country Association Clinic, where I'll be speaking on subjects about the managing of an athlete between high school track and summer track. I'm also going to be speaking at this winter at the Illinois Track and Cross Country Association Clinic, and excited and looking forward to having that opportunity to do that there. And there I'll be presenting about 4 different topics for about an hour apiece. So that'll be the most I've ever gotten to present at one individual conference. So I'm looking forward to that and the opportunity to do so. And then I'll be speaking in Central California this winter, the week later, about speed and speed training and how to manage an athlete throughout an entire season, and periodization, and how to set up an athlete for a peak at the right time. To start over here, wanted to let you guys know another exciting thing that's going to be rolling out. Coach Gozi and I, former high school track and field coach out at Lindbergh High School, and wrestling coach and cross country coach and football coach and all around good guy, and I are going to be pushing and promoting a Build a Better Athlete program, an online school, which kind of segues us into personal growth and 5 things you can do to improve yourself through a number of different means. The first of those are certifications. The second of those is mentorships. Third one is hiring a staff that pushes you. Fourth one is expanding your skill set outside your comfort zone. And the fifth one is reading from experts that are outside of your field. So we're talking about certifications. There are a lot of them out there. There's a lot of things on the internet. There's a lot of different programs, and it's very, very difficult at times to sift through which ones are good and which ones are not. I'm going to give you a handful today to kind of get yourself focused that will really, really help you. And first one being is the USATF program is excellent. Okay. And again, I was joking earlier about, there aren't, certain organizations do things really well and they don't do some things really well. But the USATF coaches certification program is really good. They do a good job of that. And the good, the bad, and the ugly of this is when you've got to go through a number of different levels to move on to the different levels of certification, just like any other program. But they're set up really well to where it builds on what you've learned in the previous course and moving on to the next one. I know that they have some online tests. I don't know if they have online programs where you can do the whole thing online now, but I always feel it's better to be in a room with a clinician, with a set of coaches, because not only are you getting the curriculum and the material, but oftentimes the best information and exchange of ideas is from the questions from the crowd that everybody's thinking, but maybe you're afraid to ask, or maybe the questions that you have afterwards that you can pull the instructor aside and talk to. Level 2, their level 2 is amazing. It's very good. Now you have, one of the things you have to realize is if you want a program to be worthwhile, you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit of your time. And the level 2 certification program takes about a week to get through. And you're going to have to work with coaches from around the country on a hypothetical situation or athlete, and you have to construct an entire training plan for that athlete. And if you've never done that process before at that level and had another set or many sets of eyes on your program and the things that you're doing, it's really revealing in a number of different ways. A, what coaches value and what coaches don't value. And then B, maybe there's some holes in your program that you never really thought about. And then the other thing is that, it's always an interesting experience to do the level 2 group project when most of us are used to being, the chiefs or the commanders and not the grunts. And so when you have this kind of power dynamic that's between everybody in the level 2, that's really interesting. And you learn a lot about being able to put your ego aside and learn to work with people that are at a high level who are also very intelligent and have a lot of experience to show that their positions or thoughts are true. So I think it's really valuable. For a home learning where you don't have to go anywhere or don't do anything outside of the building, the Altus Essentials program is great. And I know that Altus is also rolling out a number of different individual schools too. And they've brought in some of the very, very best coaches from around the world to be a part of that. And I know they have one out right now that's the short sprints program. And if you know anything about the Altus staff and the people who have been a part of that program in the past or a part of the educational schools that are there, you've got a lot of big names, a lot of big athletes, and a lot of Olympic and world championship medals. So if you're really wanting to know how to put a program together, those individual schools where you're more focused on a particular single thing is very, very valuable. And I think they just released yesterday their horizontal jumps program, which is being headed up by Boo Czechschneider, who is, the godfather of the horizontal jumps. And so those are programs that you can do and to be a part of and to have some personal growth, to not be afraid of being silly by going and asking for help or asking for favors or anything like that. And you can consume it at your own pace. The Essentials program, once you pay to be a part of the Essentials program, you can consume that information at your own pace. And obviously I'm a little biased. I provided some material for them and their presentation and stuff like that, things that have been highlighted in the Sprinters Compendium and stuff like that. But I am not the only coach. There are dozens of coaches who contributed to this, and you have good curriculum, video, presentations, poolside chats, or clinical kind of classroom setting stuff. And then you've got readings and examples. It's very well done, and it's impressive. So when you're looking at personal growth, certifications are useful. They're helpful. Now, is that the end all be all? Just because you have a level 2 in, sprints and relays and hurdles, you're all of a sudden going to become a good coach? Absolutely not. But I do feel like it narrows down the margin of error. And those programs have been put together by people that really know what they're doing, not Bob up the street who has the best summer track club and he just takes all the talented kids from around the metro area and all of a sudden it looks like a great coach. Or, you're competing against a school with 5,000 people and you're like, man, I really wonder what they're doing. They seem to win all the time. Well, there could be a variety of different reasons why they're winning, which leads me to point number 2 is that you also need to think about mentorship. And so mentorship, when we're looking at that, that's when maybe you say, all right, let's go check out what this guy's doing. Let's go see what the summer track club guy is doing. Maybe there are some really good methods to his training. Maybe there's a way of communicating with those athletes that I've never really thought about. Maybe there's a way of managing the workouts or conversation, or just purely, what does an elite training group look like? How do you handle athletes? We talked, a few minutes ago about how we handle coaches who have their own personalities and everybody wants to be the chief. But how do you handle bringing together a squad of elite people? And there's some value to that. What is that coach doing with those 5,000 kids? Because even though he's got 5,000 kids at his school, there are some other schools that are very big and very large and they're not successful. So what's going on in that culture that they are doing well? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Or have they had a sustained success for a decade? And once you kind of narrow that down and you kind of figure out, okay, these are people who have been very good everywhere they're at. So you look at somebody like Dan Path. Dan Path has had, world championship finalists in, the pole vault, the long jump, the triple jump, the 100-meter dash, the 200-meter dash, 4x1. And so at some point with somebody like that, where he's successful everywhere he goes, that's a person you probably want to talk to. That's the person you probably want to reach out to and say, hey, can I sit in on practice? Can I buy you coffee? One of the best pieces of best piece of advice I've ever gotten in terms of this kind of understanding of reaching out was from Aeneas Williams, whose daughter went here to Parkway Central for a couple of years before she moved on to Incarnate Word High School up the road a little bit. But he always said the big thing that he did is he sat down and he contacted all of the Hall of Famers who ever played his position in the NFL. And he asked them, can I sit down and buy you a coffee? And then can I talk to you and ask you questions? And these guys are retired. They're Hall of Famers. So they got nothing to hide anymore at this point. They're very willing to help. And so they shared all these ideas and methods and thought process and preparation and mental aspects of the game. And lo and behold, Aeneas Williams became a Hall of Famer. Now, obviously, just talking to people isn't going to, get you all the way there. But if you have certification and then you follow it up with mentorship with somebody who's very good at what they do, and you have a relationship with them that they trust you and they're willing to share with you, now you're able to take the paper version of it and put it together with the real world version of it and make a complete program. And, up the road, we have, I talk a lot about him, but he's very good, is Jesse Griffin. Jesse Griffin's one of the best distance coaches in the United States. Very close by, we got Sean O'Connor, who just wrote, Distance Training Simplified, which is the genius of Sean O'Connor, is that he takes a really complex idea and breaks it down into very simple, usable methods. And maybe you don't have a connection with that person directly. Maybe it's not an A to B, you've got a straight line opportunity. But then work on the relationships that eventually allow you to work your way to meeting that person or building a relationship with them. I wasn't able to just connect with Dan Path right away. Kareem Street Thompson, he opened that door up for me. He created that opportunity for me. He made that relationship happen. And now I can call Dan on the phone. I can talk to him. I can email him. I can write him. And he's very gracious and very helpful. And so mentorships aren't necessarily going to happen right away. And they may happen local first, like find the best coach in your area. Find the very best coach in your area. And then once you've built that relationship and developed that relationship and kind of learned some of those processes, you might be able to mentor them backwards too, kind of where you're giving some things back to them that they maybe never thought of. It isn't a one-way street. You can't just take all the time. It's a give and take. Okay. But then after that, then you can kind of go regionally. Okay. Who's the best, high school or college coach in the state? And then, all right, who's the best in a particular discipline in the country? I feel really blessed that we had, Brett Halter, one of the best throws coaches in the United States, and John Smith right across the river. Like, we are in very real terms a throwing mecca if you think about it. When you think about the best hammer throwers in the United States, they're from right here in the St. Louis area. So like, if you want to be good at the hammer, you probably need to go on up the road to Troy and go see the guy who's got a bunch of hammer cages and was responsible for developing Dina, or maybe you go over, down, now they're at Ole Miss, I think, but go down and talk to John Smith about how's he able to do all this stuff that he's been able to do forever. Now that doesn't mean that like everything that they do, you're going to be able to replicate, or you should even try to replicate. There might be some things you shouldn't even do. But over time, as you build that relationship and you learn, you can be very judicious in applying that knowledge that you've acquired to the situation that it best represents. And so that's how mentorship can be really, really valuable. And you shouldn't be afraid to do that. To say you don't know something is powerful, okay? To say I need help at something or I'm not the best at something is powerful. Since my assistant coach came here, Hannah Merriman, okay, who was once Coach Warman, she's now Hannah Merriman, she's married. But, she really brought another level and a focus to distance running and what the expectation was for a year-round program, even more than we were doing when I had high school All-Americans here. We're getting more out of our kids now because of how she's able to manage the distance running over the entire season, not just in the season. The fact that she's got different ideas about how you divide up the different training and how you push those buttons when you do. And that's been very valuable. And her enthusiasm is awesome and it's contagious and the kids love her. And so even a younger person who may not have all that wisdom or experience, if you will, that doesn't mean they should be dismissed. They can help mentor you as you become that mentor for other people, because you're constantly learning. All right. Once you stop learning, you might as well go ahead and go over there and start digging yourself a grave, because it's over. I do not want that. The biggest, the coolest, the most awesome thing is when I see people like Clyde Hart, who's out there coaching in his upper 80s, and he's still getting after it. And yeah, sure, he's got his own system and he's got his own thing going on. But how cool is that he's still getting up there every day and getting after it? That's a guy that when I got an opportunity to talk to him last year, it was a dream come true. It was such a fantastic, and I've been kind of running the system that he shared. But again, when it was on paper and what he talks about on paper sometimes gets lost in translation to what he really did and what he really does. For example, Clyde Hart doesn't believe in speed endurance. He either believes in maximum velocity and acceleration, okay, or special endurance. You know, the speed endurance is where he felt like Michael Johnson was constantly getting hit or hurt, sorry. And people are talking about, well, you know, Coach Hart is just, he never does speed. Oh, he absolutely does speed. He doesn't do speed endurance. You know, he doesn't go to that middle in between zone because he feels like he always gets his athletes hurt. So he kind of works on these sides. It's almost in a weird way, kind of a bipolar program. And that never occurred to me before, that's how he kind of managed that, which means, you know, for all those people who are naysayers saying those guys never go fast. Well, obviously they do. They run really fast, and they had run fast for decades, you know, but that was his own particular thing because his experience showed him that I've got really high quality athletes that can push themselves really hard. And if I go into this middle area, which is speed endurance, they're going to get hurt. So I'm going to avoid that, even though they can get some value out of that. I don't find value out of it for what I'm trying to do for a 400-meter run. It was just that little bit of information was like, bah! It was like such an eye-opening experience. All right, number 3, you need to hire staff that push you. You don't want an echo chamber. One of the things that drives me nuts is if I sit in a coach's office and I listen to people talk and the one coach says something and everybody like, okay, that's it. And there's no digression, there's no deviation from that, there's no dissent from that. And I'm not talking about being a jerk and calling somebody on the floor and pulling the rug out from under them or trying to get you an I gotcha moment. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who are willing to tell you, hey, I see this going on. I think this is something we need to address. We need to work on this. We need to get better at this. Now, with me as a coach, I do way better when it's immediately that day being discussed. I don't want a laundry list of items that I'm going to have to deal with at the end of the year. I don't deal well with that. I don't like the build up. I start to make these things in my head of what are we going to talk about? And this person's going to give me this list of all these terrible things. And we're going to have this conversation that's not really a positive reflection of our season. What I want to do is have that reflection all the time. So one of the things that we do in track and field is we get together and we sit down and we discuss who's getting who for practice at what time, once a week. We lay out our practice schedule. I need these athletes. What do you think's going well? What do you think's not going well? And we talk. And we pretty much do that every day at the end of practice. We sit around and the discussions are really good. And I know that these coaches are telling me what they think because sometimes the things they tell me, I don't want to hear. You know, nobody wants to hear that, hey, this is not good. This isn't going well. But it's so important to hear that in order for you to improve. The best coaches I've ever had, the biggest mentors in my life were the people that challenged me. You know, Ken Greathouse challenged me. He's like, you got to get better. I'm not going to coach with you anymore. Kathy Burnett said, you're a control freak. You need to figure out a way that you can still be the head coach and not try to control everything, you know, because you can't control everything. Your assistant coaches have to do stuff for you. And with their input, then I know that they're not going behind my back and telling somebody else, oh, I wish you'd do this. They're telling me. They're telling us as a group of coaches, and they're not afraid to do that. And I think part of that's because they now know I value their input. I welcome that because I desire to be better, even though I don't want to hear things are bad. Of course, nobody wants to hear that. But it's an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to improve. You don't want everyone to agree with you all the time. Now, I don't know if I want to be like Abraham Lincoln and have a group of rivals and just have these knockdown, drag-out fights between my staff. Once I hear the advice from everybody, once it's been discussed, I'm going to need some time to deliberate. I'm going to need some time to process, and I'm going to make a decision. And we're either going to change direction or I'm going to reestablish to my staff, this is why we're going to do this. This is why this athlete's going to do these events. This is why we're going to train the ways that we're going to train or divide up our sessions or our units of training. And then you have to be comfortable with that, and then they have to be comfortable with that. And one of the things that's really important, and I believe this was in my 40 and 40 years that I put out on my 40th birthday in July 9th, was the idea that honesty drives the bus of loyalty. So if they're honest with you in that room at that time, you never have to worry about what they're going to say when they're not around you. You're never going to have to worry about them undercutting you to other athletes. They're not going to do it. They're going to have your back. And that's the kind of people you want to hire. And when you hire them, you need to tell them, this is what I expect. I expect you to give me constructive criticism. I also expect you to tell me when we're doing a good job and things are going well. Don't wait till the end of the year. Don't be afraid to come to me. Now, this ugly mug, sometimes doesn't look that nice when somebody comes and they're talking to me and I'm like, giving the intense eyes and stuff like that. But that's part of me thinking and part of me processing. And trust me, I'm working on it. I'm working on how this presents itself in a more pleasant look, so that people know what I'm doing and what I'm thinking about when they come to me with these things. And I also make sure that I thank them for telling me and letting me know, and that I may need some time to think about it. And if I'm really upset by something they said, or you're going to be really upset by something that one of your assistant coaches says, it's okay for you to tell them. I don't know how I'm feeling about this right now. I think I'm going to need a minute to process. Let me come back to you and talk. Or can you talk tonight? Or, hey, can I stop by your room tomorrow morning and we can finish this conversation, because I just need to clear my head and think about it or cool off because of whatever happened, or maybe I just really don't like what was said. And it's okay to do that. But you got to have a staff that's willing to be a participant in that back and forth exchange. They can't be, yeah, everything's great, everything's wonderful, when it isn't. Because if they do that when it isn't, then you're never going to move forward. You're never going to improve. So that's really important, to hire staff that stretches you. Hire a staff member. Like Hannah's here every day in the summer. She's working her butt off every day for us. Our boys team is way better than they've been in a long time. And that's because of her being here the entire year. Yes, Coach Warren's there in the spring. Coach Guilfoyle is there in the summer. I'm there in the summer a little bit. Coach Burnett's there in the summer a little bit. And then, of course, we're all there in the fall. But she's there the whole year. It's very important to her. And so if she's there, then I got to be there too. I got to be around a lot, because I got to be pushing. I got to be working, because I'm supposed to be the head coach. So I've got to be around. I've got to be there. I've got to be present. And not that I wouldn't be, but she makes me better, and her enthusiasm and her positive attitude are wonderful. So they stretch me in that way. Like I'm grumpy and I see her smiling. I'm like, well, I don't want to ruin her day. I gotta get this together and be positive, excited, high five for kids too, because that energy is just awesome. And so you got that too. There's different ways that those coaches can push you, positive and negative. Okay? All right. Next thing, number 4, you need to expand your skill set. Okay? For a long time when I first started coaching, and I've talked about this a lot, I fancied myself as a sprints coach, which is funny because I knew nothing. The one thing I did know is we're going to work really hard, and I'm going to try to get the fast kids out on the team, and we're going to work really hard. And so we did. We worked really hard, and this one little narrow area got really, really good, and we had a lot of fast kids and a lot of great times, and kids who went on to run in college, and some of them were All-Americans and stuff like that. But the rest of the team was horrible. It was terrible. And so one of the things I knew I had to do is, okay, I'm really comfortable here. I feel good here. What's the most close thing that I can go out and learn about? Well, that was distance training. And as you know, I mean, I am not peak distance physical looking dude or anything like that. But what it allowed me to do is then to see how all the dots connect between the different training groups and the different training cycles. And it gave me more legitimacy in looking for things that I felt like our distance team and our distance program could have. And then what it allowed me to do is start scripting and writing some workouts. And then I was able to stretch myself and learn how to be better in that realm with those different events that are very, very different than sprinting. And that was so helpful to me to be able to be confident enough to say, okay, if I can do that, then I can maybe go over here and coach the jumps, or I could dabble in the throws, or I could be more of a weight room guy, and you can go even farther. Kelly Starlett, who's the mobility, guy, who's also teamed up with Athletigen, okay, who are also connected to Altus. Kelly Starlett is the guy who wrote the book, and it's called Become a Supple Leopard. And it's all about the self-mobility and self-massage management and injury prevention and prehab, and learning those skills and understanding, rolling and flossing and massaging and self-care helped me become a better coach to give my athletes things that they can do at home to limit injuries, to improve themselves. It was so useful. Learning how to do some massage. Now, again, in the world that we live in, you can't do a lot of that yourself anymore. But the more you're able to do that, if you have a license, if you're a clinically licensed massage therapist, now you understand how the body moves, you understand muscle tone. And I don't mean muscle tone like being built. I'm talking about the actual like guitar string tone, tuning the actual fibers, and understanding what's going on and how things interrelate fascially. And that way you can talk to your athlete and pinpoint the injuries a lot better. And you don't even have to put your hands on kids to do this. And if you can pinpoint those, you're going to have a lot less injuries. You're going to have kids staying healthier longer, and you're able to tell the athlete themselves, okay, here's what I would do when I go home. This is the massage routine. This is where your starting point of the massage is. This is where you're working out from across the muscle. These are the types of activities you need to do. This is how you recover after that. These are the stretches you need to do at home. All that stuff. Expand your skill set. One of the things that I realized I was very inadequate at is communicating with the athletes in times of duress, and not necessarily my duress, but their duress. And I had athletes who were underperforming in competitions versus where they were at in training. And I had one young lady, and she's in college now. She's running Division I. And there was nothing I could say that could help her get out of the funk when she got in it. And it dramatically harmed her performance. And so I said, okay, my background is in social studies. Psychology is a social science. I'm going to take a positive psychology master's. I'm going to spend the money. I'm going to get my master's degree in that, even though I have no background in it. I might have had one or two classes in high school or college that covered it, because I knew that is something I have to get better at. And Dr. Orr at Mizzou, he is working me like a dog, and it's not always easy to do the construction models and things like that, but it's got me thinking all the time about, this is a great strategy for this. Oh my God, I remember when I was talking to this kid and I said this and I saw something and I didn't address it. And maybe I shouldn't have addressed it then, but I should have came back to it the next day and then re-explained myself, or gave him a positive little quote, or, come up and give him a high five or a hug or a fist bump or a chest bump or a whatever, and tell him a goofy joke, and figure out where those things are best placed in your training and in your relationship with your athletes to elicit the results psychologically that you want from them. And we're not trying to mess with their heads. We're trying to free them from the things that get in their heads, and have that approach type psychology versus that runaway type psychology. And so that's been a stretch for me. It's been difficult for me to have conversations about different things, because it's really made me realize, holy cow, I was terrible at that. That was me. I made that mistake, and I might have not permanently harmed that kid, but I probably ruined that kid's week, and it stretched my understanding. It's stretching my abilities. It's stretching my workload. But at the end of the day, it's going to make me a much better teacher in the classroom, and it's going to make me a much better coach. And so there's all those types of things. Hey, you're not good at running track meets. I was terrible at running track meets. And I got the best guy in the St. Louis area, Steve Warren. He is the man when it comes to running off meets. And that's why we host so many darn meets, is because of his reputation. And I'm like, you know what? It's going to be a train wreck the first couple of times of me doing this, but I need to do it. I can't rely on him to always do all this stuff for me, because eventually someday, I mean, the man's like immortal, I swear. It's like a day walker or something. But anyway, he's going to retire. And I need to be ready to host and to manage those events and to be prepared for that. Now, that doesn't mean I need to always take over. You know, my co-head coach, if you will, Coach Guilfoyle, who coaches the boys cross country program, he does a lot of work in the paperwork thing and certain side of things. He's really helped us out with the trip we're going on tomorrow. He's done a lot of work in that regard. But I need to have those skills and be able to do that stuff too. And in track and field, I've had the opportunity to do that. And now when we host track meets at Parkway Central, I don't feel like I am all that much behind Steve where it would be noticeable on a regular basis, and that we're getting the meets done with relative quickness and there's not a lot of delays. And that was an area where I needed to improve. And there were some disasters and things early on when we first started to decide to host some track meets. But as we've done it and we've learned and we've gotten better, and so has my staff has gotten better at helping me host those, man, they're so much better now. And it is worthwhile to do. And our kids are able to perform and have good PRs and run in good conditions. And that's made our program a lot better for the whole program, not just our superstars, but everybody, because now they're getting a greater chance to compete because we decide the rules of the competition. And one of the things I try to focus on is, all right, how can we get a lot of people in the meet and not have the meet last an extraordinarily long time? So we've created this unique format where we, have a friend series where we do half the schedule the one week, the next schedule, the other events the next week. And then when we decide to finally go and move on to a third one, then we'll do like a relay meet. And so the athletes get all these opportunities to compete in a variety of different events, and the meets don't last that long because parents don't want to sit in the stands, when it's really cold in the winter and things like that. And those are things that you learn, ideas like that, by putting yourself in a position where you're stretched. Last thing, every day you should be reading. Now, I'm not one of those guys who posts a ton of books. Oh my God, I'm so smart. Look at all these books I'm reading. Because I don't have a lot of time. And I'm not the fastest reader, but I read, and I read often. And you need to. And that doesn't mean you need to stick with one book and plow through it. Like if you've got to read the Sprinter's Compendium from cover to cover, good luck. Good luck. It's not, there's a lot of information in there, but that would not be wise. Reading Super Training, by Yuri Vershansky, that's a great book, but that needs to be consumed in small bites. You can't eat a month's worth of food in a single breakfast. So take your time. You lose a little interest, don't give the book up. Don't get rid of the book. Come back to it, but circle to another book. Circle to another book that maybe isn't even all that related to whatever you're coaching. It could be something just about leadership or great people. My father and I, when we went on our way to Wyoming this summer, we listened to a whole bunch of stuff about Teddy Roosevelt. It was awesome. I didn't know half the stuff about Teddy Roosevelt. And so when I came back, and I'm teaching him now in my classroom, because I teach him every year, I've got all these additional really cool factoids that just fill in this character, fill in that canvas of who this guy was as a leader and his psychology and why he was the way that he was, the good versus evil and all this kind of stuff, and how he was loving but yet intense, and tough, but at the same time wanted to protect the little guy, and somewhat of, not even somewhat, very eccentric and egotistical, but in a way that's charming, and entertaining. And so you could have some personal reflection on that, right? And these different stories that you read and these different people. And you should be doing that a lot. If you're spending more than a half an hour on social media, that should be it. Cut it off. I know I'm talking for about a half an hour, 34 minutes. But it's time to go call a friend. It's time to pick up a book. It's time to go call the mentor. It's time to check out one of those certifications, okay? Because now you're wasting your time. You've updated yourself on everyone you need to update yourself, even this guy talking to you right now, okay? So what you need to do is go through that list. Think about the certifications, and can you sign up for one this winter? Can you go to a clinic? Can you find yourself a mentor? Reach out. Write an email tonight. Write an email. Go out there and buy yourself a new good book on Amazon tonight. Okay. Think about tomorrow. Is there a person on my staff or in my building that's an amazing coach, and I need to figure out a way to get them to help us? Even if I don't have a stipend for them, can I fundraise for them? Can I ask them to volunteer for a year, and then maybe when somebody retires, I can bring them in? Can they come help me once a week, but guaranteed once a week? Can they help me for meets, just to have them around for kids? Can you expand your skill set? Is there something you've been wanting to do? Hey, you want to be really good at sports and physical training and strength and conditioning? Probably need to speak German at some point, or Italian, or Russian, or you better start to learn Chinese. Maybe that's something you do to expand your skill set. There's all sorts of things that you can do to improve, and they're good to do. And then read a good book every day, because reading is way better than looking at this stuff on the internet as I'm talking to you now. All right, guys. Thank you for listening in, giving me some thumbs up as we move forward. I really appreciate that. Feel free to share this. I will upload this onto YouTube too, so people can go back and find it if they don't want to follow all the way through my news feed. Please subscribe there and click the little button, the bell button, when you see it, when I put it up there, because that always helps me out and gets more views and more likes. And if there's something you want me to talk about or share, please hit me up. If you got questions, hit me up. I want to know what you're thinking and what you got questions and concerns about. All that kind of stuff is what I'm here to do. That's why I'm here. This is what I believe in. This is why I believe I've been put on this earth, is to do this type of stuff in terms of mentorship and share ideas so that you don't have to make the same mistakes that I made. You can make lesser egregious ones, smaller ones down the road that aren't as big. Let me truncate your learning curve for you. All right, guys, I love you. Take care. We'll see you soon.